It's a privilege to be here. This is the first time that I've ever been in this type of audience, but there have been many, many avenues that Lupe has opened doors for me in working within the community and actually understanding my community at different levels. One of the things in coming onto the insurance aspect, I was actually working at Channel 5, a little history about me. I was working at Channel 5 because my goal was ultimately to work on Sesame Street. I wanted to work and I was a puppeteer. I've been a puppeteer, God, now probably over 38 years. So I tell stories to children and I teach them how to dream big and how to not have barriers. Barriers are built by others, but to break those barriers and those glass ceilings. So when that transition in from, Channel 5 as a documentary assistant to work on Sesame Street, a family member had a severe injury. So I, being at that time, was the only person who was not married. So I had the capability, according to my family structure, that I could move in with my uncle and take care of his family. And yet, at that time, that's what family does. We don't question, we just go where we're needed. And so then I learned about this workers' compensation insurance. He had a catastrophic loss. My family comes from the migrant fields. So we were all farm workers until my mom decided to take a class in typing. She then became an engineer. She was the first to come in our family back in the 80s. She became an engineer and a computer designer for IBM. And so from there, thank you for that. From there, she basically, I was programmed myself I was going to go to college. There was no ifs, ands, or buts. But in this transition, I realized that the workforce is highly neglected in really understanding their rights and benefits and what they're entitled to. So as I lived with my uncle, transitioned for 3 years until he was able to return to the workforce, overcome a lot of psychological issues, he became his own business owner on his independent. And so in doing that, I have been in the field of insurance for 38 years, working alongside employers, but mainly directly servicing employees. And I worked in vocational training as well. Vocational rehab was a benefit in which we had mandatory prior to 2014, but there were changes made to the laws. And now people are left on their own to try, if they have a severe injury, to actually find placement. So in the position that I'm in now, I work with Edgewood Partners Insurance Center. And what I do is I'm a VP, and I take that really proudly because I am the only woman that's a VP in our company. And in the field that I'm in, I sit at a board meeting and I'm the only woman present. I'm the only woman of color present. And yet we drive. 6 years ago, I came onto the company, and my area of study was Chicano Studies with a minor in mass communication. And why I always reach out to my guru, Lupe, is because people don't understand what culture really means. Culture is not just a language. It is an encompass of many things. It is the generation in which we migrate into the U.S. It is the belief system in where we have lived into the U.S. and how we migrated either from east to west or west to east. It is a belief. It is our communities. And so when I go into a employer to actually analyze the risk factors and I look at their insurance programs, I really hit two genres. I go into the corporate culture, and then I look at the workforce culture. And when I break that down, I'm looking at also their loss. Their loss runs encompasses all the injuries that they've had within a period of 10 years. And in the office, they call me the claims whisperer because I'm able to read what the loss run is telling me, because I'm looking at generations and I'm looking at processes and how people work and do their job. So when I learned in coming into this industry that the power came from being knowledgeable in what I was doing and being exceptional at implementing a different thought every day in what I'm doing. And so in this field that I'm in, I am able to take a company, which I have a particular company that was a high-risk company. High risk meaning we were having a consecutive injuries. We have a workforce of 250 people. We were having an average 25 to 30 losses a year. That's a lot. In that it impacts what we refer to as an experience mod rating. And an experience mod rating is like our own driving record. We know when we've had an accident what that impacts our own personal premium. So here, within a company that I identified, the issues were not because people were accident prone. The issues were because people were being neglected as an employer. There was no safety program in place. There were no wellness programs in place. There were no personal benefits. So what recourse do people have if they have nothing? So workers' compensation is a mandatory law within the states. And within California, it is a very liberal law. And so what I decided to do is, how do I have the corporations take more ownership? Instead of instructing what people need to do, but actually to be listeners. So in doing that, I have to identify the dollars. The dollars of cost, if we were to continue this is what your premium will be. Or if we were to implement some of the wellness programs, training programs, English as a second language to train people, then we're looking at a projected cost at about a 35% reduction. And I've been really successful at that. It's a new concept, but it's not new to me or to you, but it is new to many corporations. So in this particular company coming on board, I actually helped. It was a French-owned company. I've never been to Europe. I don't work with very many Europeans, so I had to study European culture. And I had to understand their thought process so that they could understand 85% of their Latino-based, Central American, because we're not all Mexican. Everyone thinks that we are, but we have a common language. But to understand the belief system from people from Guatemala, El Salvador, and Nicaragua, very distinctly different. So when we broke it down, we then started I encouraged them to self-promote from within, to identify that they had some leaders within their workforce that they were overlooking. And in that piece, we created a leadership program within the company. And so when you make people, when you help them identify their worth, that regardless if they have not been privileged to go to college or privileged to complete high school, but the fact that they know the business and they are able to contribute more than the tasks they're given, and then develop them within the leadership position, then I think that was a big component of the 33% reduction in losses. Because people now, and this company, they've successfully have gone down to, in the mod for California, everybody wants to be under 100%. Because 100% is low premium. It's low premium, minimal cost, so you can actually spend expenses or more investment in benefits, benefit programs, 401k programs. Because when I look at a loss run, I don't even have to, I don't have the date of birth, but I can tell who is over 55, who is over 65, because the workers' compensation claim becomes their retirement package. Because there is no 401k in place, there is no pension program, there is no wellness program. But when they saw it's cheaper to have the benefits than to actually pay the claim and the cost, for 3 years it stays on our records as an employer. So then in that they decided, okay, we're gonna shift and make change. So now this client, it took 3 years culturally to change their culture to a safety first culture is what we call it. And now they are at a 0.82, which they were at over 200% in loss, 2.22. Now, how does, one woman come into this company 6 years ago and make change? I realized when I went through the interview process, I was the only woman of color there at the table. I was interviewed by all men until my third interview. And I was 55 when I was 50 when I decided to change careers. So that's like really unheard of. Women at 50 don't normally make a complete switch into a brokerage entity. But I did because I knew that I had more value than I was able to provide my 10 to 12 employees. So now I actually created a unit that is fully bilingual. I have 4 Latinos, and we are the only advocacy workforce in all brokerages across California that has a Latin base, and we promote that with all our clients. I've been able to bring in $3.4 million in revenue based on asking the brokerage to look at Latino-owned businesses. I also target businesses that have predominantly workforce of Latinos, 85% or more. My mods for my clients are all under 100. And the basis of that is really something that started with Lupe. It's, I refer to it as an invisible backpack. When we meet people, we immediately meet them based on their introduction, based on how they identify themselves. But we have to be really good listeners to really know what their backpack is, what consists and where they're from, and what they believe in. So whenever I work to partner with a potential employer, I research. I know where they came from. I know what generation they were born in the US, where their parents came from. There's right now a $54 million company that I am a big leader in prospecting this client. I've been put on the table 3 times. I can't get them yet to say yes. But what impressed me so much about the company is that it was a one-man vision where he bought 1 parking lot. He bought 1 parking lot in the 40s. He now owns parking lots across the United States and at major airports. This was an immigrant's dream, but he took a risk. And in that risk-taking, he had somebody else believe in him. And then when his sons graduated from Yale, he didn't want to put them in a position in his company until they were able to contribute to the company. And so then one of his sons, who became an attorney, contributed. He came in with a line of credit. His requirement was $50 million. And in that line of credit, they now were able to go and purchase more companies, more parking lots. So what I'm trying to say is that I hold value with people who are hard workers. And I think sometimes we oversee the worker. We don't focus and build them up. And so that's why I was invited today, because that's my target. That's what I hit every time I go to an employer. What are we doing for the workforce, and how can we make it better? And how can we make a difference in the generations that follow each one of their children? So, thank you.